Welcome back to Never Enough Novels. Today I am taking you on a trip to Scotland as I share 9 different books that are set in that country. I've always had a fascination with Scotland and I would love to spend more time exploring the country, so I'm really excited to share these 9 books that will make it feel like you're there. I'm going to put the links to all of these books down below so you can grab them from Amazon or Target if you're interested and help support this channel along the way. And make sure you hit like on this video and subscribe to see even more book recommendations in the future. This list of books set in Scotland is from a variety of different genres, so I have a few romances, of course, but I also have some thrillers, a epic historical fiction series, and even a nonfiction book to share with you today. Let's dive into a few romances that are set in Scotland. The first book on my list is The Highland Fling by Megan Quinn. This was one of the very first Megan Quinn romances that I actually read, and it is still one of my favorites of hers. I just absolutely fell in love with the small town in Scotland, the friendship between the two girls who are the main characters in the story, and of course the romance. Plus, Megan normally writes in series, but this is one of her more rare standalone books, so it's really easy to pick it up by itself. The book is about 2 American friends who take a chance on a summer job where they'll be running a coffee shop in a small Scottish town. Over the course of those few months during the summer, they both realize that they're getting to know themselves better, finding new relationships, and a purpose that they never expected. The book mainly focuses on the one girl, Bonnie, and her rocky relationship with the local handyman named Rowan, but the other characters really round out this story well. It's impossible not to fall in love with all of the characters you'll find in this book, and I really love the discrepancy between the 2 American girls and this close-knit Scottish community. They certainly had their work cut out for them trying to blend in and figure out their way, and it made for some really hilarious and heartwarming moments. This is also more of a slow burn romance, whereas normally Megan Quinn does not shy away from the spice, so this makes it really accessible for any type of romance reader. Next up is Under Lock and Key by Elena Ferguson, and you'll get the chance to encounter the Loch Ness Monster in this unique romance from one of my go-to authors. Our main character, Key, travels to Scotland to try and reconnect with her estranged grandparents after her father dies. While she's staying with them, she ends up interacting with their farm helper, Lachlan, and those two do not get off to a good start at all. But over time, they realize they might actually be able to help each other out. As it turns out, Key and Lachlan's families are deeply intertwined, and she might just be the only person that can help him break his family's curse. This has the perfect amount of magical realism and plenty of steamy scenes. Plus, I just loved the enemies to lovers beginning that slowly transformed into a deep trust between these two. Plus, the whole story of Key's developing relationship with her grandparents really rounded out the story well. It was really interesting how Key's grandmother was initially openly hostile toward her, but her grandfather more quickly softened to having her around. And over time, as she stays with them, we learned more about the history between her grandparents and her father, and we got to see how time can heal even the deepest of wounds. So this was just a really great story from start to finish. Next up is a more cozy, charming type book, and that is Snowed In for Christmas by Sarah Morgan. I discovered Sarah somewhat recently, and I have been working my way through her entire backlist because she just writes these quintessential, charming, heartwarming stories that are so full of hope and love, and I just can't get enough of them. Snowed In for Christmas features a career woman who gets caught up in a fake relationship in the Scottish Highlands. Lucy has one goal this Christmas season, and that is to track down Ross Miller at his family's house and get him to sign as her new marketing client. However, when she shows up unexpectedly at his family home, they accidentally mistaken her as his girlfriend. Lucy and Ross decide to just go along with this ruse, so they start to welcome Lucy into all of their family traditions. She realizes that this family isn't quite as picture perfect as she has seen in the media, but they are the close-knit, cozy, and caring family that she doesn't have in her own life. In addition to Lucy and Ross, there is also plenty of drama with his 3 other siblings, who are each dealing with their own problems in life and love. The whole family ended up playing a larger role in this entire novel, making it more than just a simple romance between one couple. Sarah Morgan has a way of creating magic within her stories, and I guarantee your heart will be full after you close the cover of this one. And the last romance I'm sharing today is called Kilt Trip by Alexandra Kiley. If you are looking for a romance that truly takes you through the different parts of Scotland and will make it feel like you're actually there in the country, then this is the one for you. Addie is a tour guide consultant who is assigned to a small family business in Scotland to help them modernize their business and become successful again. They desperately need to update their business model, but on her first day at work, she realizes that the extremely charming and handsome tour guide that she saw the day before is actually the owner's son, and he is less than thrilled that she is there to shake things up in their company. Logan specializes in finding unique hidden gems that set their touring company apart from others, but he's unwilling to admit that they need to change some things in order to keep the business afloat. Addie and Logan immediately clash when she starts suggesting that they add more touristy destinations that will be popular with more people. So we've got a very heavy enemies to lovers plus co-workers vibes in this one that is so much fun to read. I really like that this book specifically spends so much time exploring different parts of Scotland, since the whole premise revolves around a travel company. It was interesting seeing the difference between the small businesses and more off the beaten path things that Logan valued versus Addie's suggestions of more well-renowned Scottish destinations. But overall, throughout this entire book, you will feel like you are actually there exploring with them. Then moving on to some thrillers and mysteries that are set in Scotland. First up is Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney. And I was initially intrigued by this one because of the very minimal information that we knew about in the summary of the book. So Grady is a writer who was on the phone with his wife when he hears her stop the car and get out, and then just hears silence on the other end. When they eventually find the car, there is no sign of his wife. It's like she has disappeared into thin air. So we meet up with Grady basically a year later, and he is still dealing with his grief and all of these unanswered questions because he still has no idea what happened to his wife. So he takes an opportunity that his agent gives him to use this remote cabin on a small Scottish island in the hopes to kind of get his life back in order and get back to writing. When he steps onto the island and starts to meet the people that live there, he sees a woman who looks impossibly exactly like his wife. But Grady has been having some drinking problems and hasn't been sleeping well, so he realizes that this probably isn't her, and that these set of circumstances are starting to make him see things or imagine things that aren't there. But there are also a lot of really strange things happening on the island that just don't add up. He can't figure out why some of the residents are so openly hostile to him, or why others are clearly keeping secrets from him. So he's trying to figure out what is truly going on this island and how his wife is connected to these people. I admittedly didn't love this one. It just felt like too much of a slow burn to finally get all of the answers, but I know there's a ton of people on Instagram and on Goodreads that gave this rave reviews, so I think this was just a case of not the right book for me, but one that I would still recommend to other people who normally like this type of thriller. It did wrap up in a pretty interesting way, so I think all those twists and turns and the slow burn to get there made it really worthwhile for a lot of people. Next up is an older thriller called The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley, and this features a group of friends who choose a remote resort in the Scottish Highlands for their annual get-together. But what starts as a fun reunion trip quickly turns sinister as old resentments arise and tensions build among them, and by New Year's Day, one of them is dead, and they all know that someone within their group committed the murder, but the question is who? This thriller has a little bit of that locked room type element because they are all stranded at this resort once a blizzard sweeps through and cuts them off from civilization. The only two other people around are additional employees who each have their own dark pasts, which kind of kept readers guessing as to what their motives are and how they were involved as well. This was a really enticing read as we slowly find out more about each of the friends and their history with each other, and it was definitely a slow build of the tension as more and more resentments came to light, especially knowing that one of them would be dead by the end of the weekend. The book is also told from multiple different character perspectives, so it changed from chapter to chapter, and that element kept it like a page-turning read that I just couldn't put down. And the last mystery I'll share is another locked room type mystery. So if you like that style of writing, you're definitely going to want to give this one a try. And that book is called Murder on the Christmas Express by Alexandra Benedict. It focuses on a group of passengers who are on the sleeper train from London to the Scottish Highlands when their train derails and they find themselves stuck in the middle of nowhere. The situation becomes even more dire when they realize that there is a killer among them and they are slowly being picked off one by one. Thankfully, a former detective is on board the train and she picks up the case and tries to piece through all of the clues, even as passengers kind of slowly form alliances in order to try to stay alive. Although it takes place on Christmas Eve, this is obviously a modern take on Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express, and it sounds like one that you can absolutely enjoy any time of year. I always love these sort of mysteries where the people are stuck in a place or cannot leave, and you never know who the next person to die is going to be. And I think it's going to be interesting to read along with the detective as she starts to piece through the clues and try and figure out who the actual murderer is. So this sounds like it'll be a really quick read as the danger keeps escalating and she's fighting against time to try and find the murderer before anyone else can die. Next up is an epic historical fiction saga, and you cannot have a list of books set in Scotland without including this book, and that is Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. The series now spans 9 books, and it's even been adapted into an extremely popular TV show on Starz. It ends up spanning multiple time periods in history throughout the series, and the characters travel to different countries, but it all starts in Scotland. A young wife, Claire, and her husband are taking a second honeymoon to Scotland after they are finally reunited at the end of World War II. Her husband is a history professor, and he takes pride in his knowledge of the Scottish Highlands and the clans that ruled over this land in the 1700s. He's also eager to share this information with his wife, but little does Claire know that this is going to end up being extremely helpful after she has this supernatural encounter with a unique rock formation just outside of the town they're staying in. When she comes to her senses, she realizes that she is actually now in the 1740s in this area of Scotland. She has traveled back in time and cannot figure out a way to get back to her husband. While she's there, she is discovered by one of the clans and basically taken in by them and forced to acclimate to this new time period and this new way of life, all while trying to learn more about these standing stones and how they might be able to transport her back to the 1940s. But as time goes on and she still has no knowledge about how she actually traveled to this time period, she's starting to accept that she might actually be stuck here in the 1700s. So she starts to develop bonds with the men and women that she encounters in that time period, including young Jamie Fraser, with whom she shares a connection that is unlike anything she's ever known. This is an epic saga that follows Jamie and Claire as they work together to try to save their fellow clansmen from a terrible fate. And Claire is basically constantly battling with her knowledge of the future and whether she should try to change the events of the past or allow things to happen as they were meant to. The first book takes place entirely in Scotland, so you'll get a dose of action and adventure and romance all set against this stunning Scottish backdrop. The last book I'm sharing today of books set in Scotland is a nonfiction option. It's called The Diary of a Bookseller by Sean Bythell. This is a nonfiction book that is going to be a must-read for any book lovers out there because it tells stories from one of Scotland's largest used bookstores located in Wigtown. If you haven't heard of it before, Wigtown, Scotland has been officially designated as Scotland's national book town. It is packed full of new and used bookstores as well as a bunch of other bookish businesses, and it is definitely one of those places that's high on my bucket list to see someday. In The Diary of a Bookseller, Sean talks about his experience as the owner of the bookshop. This store contains over 100,000 books and at least a mile of shelving. He discusses the trials of owning a bookstore, the people from all over the world he meets who are coming in search of books, and the eccentric band of people that he's hired to help run it. Within the pages, you'll go along with him as he heads to estate sales and other places to buy books for his store. You'll get his own personalized book recommendations and just hear overall commentary on life in this small town. I haven't read this yet, but it is definitely on my TBR to savor someday. It sounds like the perfect collection of charming stories that any reader will delight in. So those are just a few of my recommendations of books set in Scotland that will transport you to that beautiful country. Let me know in the comments if you have any other books that you would add to this list, and make sure you subscribe to see even more book recommendations in the future.